This meeting is
Hello
being...
and welcome to another episode of Matchday Musings. I'm joined by a very special guest. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is David Fuller, and I am the marketing manager of Newhaven Football Club.
Okay, so for starters, can you explain a little bit for the viewers about what your role entails?
So my role is to promote Newhaven Football Club in and around the town of Newhaven, which is based in East Sussex. Not just what's happening on the pitch, but off it as well. It's really starting to become a community club. They've had a lot newer facilities put in. They've laid a 3G pitch, improved the stand, the bar area, the changing rooms, just everything down where they play Fort Road. It's completely different and it looks fantastic now. So it's getting more people to know about Newhaven Football Club and what we can offer the community itself.
That sounds great. So how long have you been involved in the club in different capacities or whatever?
So I grew up literally, my house was across the road from the stadium, the ground, Fort Road. So as a 8-9-year-old child, I used to go over and watch the games, like the number one supporter as a child. By the time I was 17, 18 years old, I had moved on to writing match reports for the local newspaper, the Sussex Express. So I used to be a regular again down Fort Road, speaking to the managers, writing reports for the newspapers. So yeah, that took up a lot of my childhood and my teen years as well. I then moved away to university, kind of stopped watching them. Other things happened. I got married when I came back, moved on, had children, blah, 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 and kind of just fell away from the non-league scene a little bit. Then I would say 4 or 5 years ago now, just before COVID kicked in, I started ground hopping. So I started going around lots of different non-league grounds, mostly around Sussex, but also into Kent, Surrey, Hampshire, the surrounding counties. I even did a few up north as well. Yeah, and I loved it. I got really back into the non-league, everything about it, as we've already spoken about, the community feel that you get with a non-league team that you maybe don't get with a professional game anymore. The fact that you can sit with the opposing players, you can have a alcoholic drink if that's what you want to do. You can speak to the players. It's just a really different, nice atmosphere. So I did that for a season, absolutely enjoyed it, as I've already said, but something was missing. It was great doing it, but I wanted to feel more part of something. I wanted to feel like I belonged to kind of a following, a fan base, if you like. I think there was one club in particular, Eastbourne Town, who've got a really good following. They get maybe 30, 40 people a game, like away games. They've got drums, they've got chants. And I wanted something like that, I wanted to feel part of something, that I belonged. So after that season, I started following Newhaven Town, my local team. So I got back into it that way. The first 2 seasons I tried to follow them, disrupted by COVID, not ideal. Last year, had a really good season. Newhaven, they finished 3rd in the league, got into a playoff to go up to the Isthmian divisions for the first time. Unfortunately, they lost to Lancing. They got into a cup final, they got into a semi-final. So it was a really good time to be, reacquainting myself as a fan. The end of last season, I wanted to get involved somehow, but I am the least practical man in the world. I have no practical skills at all. So I wanted to do something that maybe put my skills that I could offer them to use. And it was funny because I was away last half term, so back in June, and I'd said to my wife, I've got these ideas. I want to produce a little magazine for Newhaven, and I want to start a blog about Newhaven. And I had all these ideas. And then we got back off the holiday, and completely randomly, they advertised for a marketing manager. And I thought, that's exactly what I want to do. So I got in touch with the chairman, who I know quite well from having been a regular supporter for the last 2 or 3 years seasons. I said, look, I'd love to be involved. I'm really passionate about it. And yeah, and then I became a marketing manager from them. So really early stages at the moment. It's only been a couple of months, but loving it.
How are you finding it?
Really enjoying it. I mean, I'm doing a lot of writing. I'm a writer anyway. That's been my profession since I left university 20 years ago. So I've got a lot of history of writing. So I'm really into I love football, as you can probably tell. I don't mind speaking to people. So actually, you'll put all those things together.
It sounds
And yeah,
perfect.
it's the perfect job. It's the perfect role for me. Yeah.
So just touching on what you said a moment ago about a different feel to a professional club, how would
Yes.
you say your role differs from one of a similar nature within a professional club?
I would say access. Simple as that. I've got access to the players, men's and women's, under 23s, the 18s, the youth team players if I need it. I've got access to the chairman, the groundsman, the managers, the development officers, anyone I need to speak to. They're a phone call away. I mean, I've not worked for a professional team, but I would imagine if you wanted to speak to someone, you have to go through this person and that person.
Lots of
And
red
it's
tape kind of thing.
lots of red tape. And also, I would imagine what you can say, you have to be a lot more careful with. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not going out of my way to wind anyone up with what I say, but I can be quite tongue in cheek. And sometimes, especially when you're writing something down, what you say can get lost in translation.
Yep.
So whereas I know I'm being sarcastic, someone reading it, particularly from another team, might think, well, that's not really very nice. And I don't mean it in a nasty way, but it's just it can get lost in translation sometimes.
Misconstrued, yeah.
Misconstrued, exactly that. So I would imagine if you're working for a professional team, you're going to have a lot more. Yeah, you're going to be under wraps a lot more.
So obviously, before we dive into more detail of your career as a sort of involved in a football club, I believe you've written books.
I have. So I left university, as I said earlier, and I became a writer. I worked for a magazine for 7.5 years. Now, as a child, once I realised I wasn't going to be good enough to be a professional football player, which, was quite young, to be honest, I decided I'd like to be a football writer, a sports writer anyway. And that's one of the reasons I started doing match reports for Newhaven all those years ago in the late 90s. Unfortunately, once I left university, didn't become a sports writer. I did become a writer, but I didn't get to write about sports. I actually started writing about emigration and overseas property, which is about as far removed from writing about sport as it is possible to be. About 2009, 2010, when the financial crisis happened, the credit crunch, I was made redundant from that magazine, which was actually quite a nice thing because I've been looking to leave it for quite a long time anyway. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do next. I knew that I didn't want to go back to writing about things that didn't really interest me. I wanted to write about something I had a passion for. Around that time, I'd also become a qualified football coach. I was working at a football school in Brighton, coaching lots of children. And from conversations I had with these children, I realised that quite a lot of them didn't enjoy reading that much. And that really, I wouldn't say it upset me, but it disappointed me because I've always been a keen reader. So what I wanted to do is to start writing stories that might appeal to these children at the football school who weren't overly keen on reading. And from that, I developed a character called Alfie Jones. And I'm 7 books in with that series now. So it's been good.
So would you like to tell us a little bit more about the series, just for any younger viewers that are watching?
Absolutely. So Alfie Jones at the start of the series is a 9-year-old boy who, a bit like me when I was at primary school, is absolutely obsessed with football, dreams of being a professional football player. He then meets a fortune teller at a fun fair who tells him that it's his destiny to become the thing that he dreams of being. But she also warns him that that will only happen if he listens to and follows the advice that she gives him. Unfortunately for Alfie, when the fortune teller, whose name is Madame Zola, when she tells Alfie things, she doesn't always tell him exactly what it is he has to do. So in each book, he has to try and figure out quite what she's talking about, and also try to understand why what she's telling him may be important to his dream coming true one day. So that's the premise of each book. He gets older in each book. So he starts off at 9 years old, and in the most recent book, he's in the under 14. So he's in year 9 at school.
Ooh.
So and obviously as he gets a little bit older, different things start happening. So he gets a girlfriend, which is obviously very different from the early stages where all he's interested in is football. So I try and make it reflect the journey that a young child would maybe go on.
That's very interesting.
Thank you.
So now going into your sort of marketing manager and that in a bit more detail, Can you tell me what an average match day would be like for you?
So an average match day for me at the moment is I like to, well, the build up to the match day is just promoting as much as I can on social media. So it's tweeting, it's putting on Facebook, sharing anything that the club have put up, just trying to build up a little bit of interest in the match itself, because we want to increase the crowds down there. We think that's quite a key thing. It's a good standard of football. Once people come along and watch and see how good the team is, especially now they've got the new 3G surface, I think they'll keep coming back. It's also much more affordable than a Premier League game as well.
Mm-hmm.
So just on that subject, it costs £6 to get in. Drinks are less than £4. If you want a pint of beer, it's less than £4. It's just so much more affordable. I took my son, who's a Brighton fan, I think you are as well, from what I've seen. Yeah, huge Brighton fan. So I took him to a game for his birthday last season, along with a couple of friends, and the whole day cost me in excess of £100. And it was a 0-0 draw with Norwich. so it wasn't the best £100 I've ever spent. So it's getting that message out there. That's the build up to match day. Match day itself, I like to get in the ground maybe an hour before kickoff, see what the teams are going to be. Again, get that information out there if I can. I will watch the game. I write a blog of the games afterwards. I've got a blog. So again, that's quite an irreverent take on it's not necessarily something you'd see published in a newspaper. It can be a little bit tongue in cheek, as we spoke about earlier. So I'll be taking notes on what's happened in the game itself. And then at the end of the match, my 9-year-old son, who is, well, he's a version of me from that age, basically. He loves going to the games. He knows the players. They all high-five him every week. He's been a mascot for them a few times. He will then go and interview a player after the game, and I'll film it, and that will get put on the blog as well.
Awesome.
So again, that is something that just wouldn't happen if you were a marketing manager at, say, Brighton. You could say, oh, by the way, I'm going to get my 9-year-old son to go and interview Neil Morpie and ask him why he missed that penalty. Whereas, whereas at this level, I can sort of say, you can have a bit of fun with them. So they've got an Everton fan, and my son's question to him was, why do you play for a team that wins quite a lot but support a team that loses every week?
I like that question. That's a good question.
Yeah, exactly. And you can get away with it when you're 9. But yeah, so
I don't think either of us would get away with a question like that.
Exactly that. He can say things that I don't. And like the other night, I was at a game where we won 5-0, and it was quite a comfortable game. And he asked the goalkeeper at the end of the match if Liss doing the interview was the busiest he's been all night. Again, you can't say that if you're us, but for him,
I mean, fair comment.
Yeah, it was a fair comment, but it's quite disrespectful. And he came up with that question by himself. I just want to make that absolutely clear. That was his question. Sometimes I will sort of say, well, ask him this, ask him that. Mm-hmm. But I said to him, who do you want to speak to? And he said, Jake Buss. I said, why do you want to speak to Jake Buss? He said, well, because he hasn't done anything all night. He looks bored. Mm-hmm. He said, can I ask him about that? I said, well, if you have to, that's up to you. So yeah, that was his question.
So just sort of touching briefly again on what you said just now about the cost of the Premier League and the Football League, for example, how can people like me that support a Premier League club because it's our home sort of big city team and we've grown up here, how can we support you as a sort of non-league club?
I think just come and watch a game. Maybe if Brighton have an away game, if you're a season ticket holder, come along and watch. It's not just Newhaven. There's so many non-league teams around Sussex and wherever you live, whatever county you're in. So it's just about getting involved. Down at Newhaven, as I've already said, it's £6 to watch the men's first team. It's also free to go to women's first team on a Sunday. So, they play at a decent level. They're in the, I think it's a London Regional Southeast Division 1 South, which is the third tier of the non-league women's pyramid. So it's quite high up. It's probably, they play, they're playing Fulham, funnily enough, in the FA Cup in a few weeks. So, I mean, how good is that? So that's going to be at home. But so they're at a decent level, and the matches are free to come along and watch. As I've said earlier, the facilities over at the ground have been renovated over the summer. They now look fantastic. So you can go in there free, go and get a drink in a clubhouse, a cup of tea, coffee, beer, whatever you want, and go and watch a game of football for nothing.
Very nice.
I think especially this season with the World Cup causing that 6-week break that they're going to have in the Premier League and the Championship, I think there's a real opportunity there to get along, watch your non-league club, your local non-league team. It's going to cost you not a lot of money. If you go and watch 2 or 3 games, you'll start knowing some of the crowd because they tend to be the same people that go over and over. You'll start off on nodding terms. 3 games in, you'll know first names of people.
No.
And it's a really, really good feel. And like I say, that's at Newhaven, but it's going to be at wherever your local non-league side is.
Obviously, you've just mentioned the new playing surface.
Yes.
How much would you say that's given you a positive impact to try and push on?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Newhaven, the men's and the women's team, to be honest, they try and play football what we now term as the right way. So ball on the floor, knocking it about, not the probably antiquated view that we have of non-league football where it's just hoof down the field for a big man to head it on and then 2 quick people running it. They don't try and play like that. So from a football side of things, the surface is going to be great because it's going to make the games look better. It's going to mean the games can be on even when the weather turns in the winter and you start getting the rain and the snow and the things that cause postponements of games. We're always going to get games on over there. So that's going to be really good for the community. Whereas before you had the first team, the women's team, the under-18s, the under-23s, the women's development squad, where you had all those teams using the pitch over a season, you can imagine what the pitch started to look.
Yeah, it's going to go muddy and boggy. And...
Exactly, it wasn't great. You're not going to have that problem this year. They're also going to host things like the Leisure League. So Tuesday night, Wednesday night, mini-sized football games. So it's being opened up to the community. Yeah, it's just going to make a big difference. They can host school finals on it. It's just a really, really, really nice looking facility now.
That's obviously very positive.
It is really positive, and it's just going to open up the community. I mean, they're off the pitch. They're looking to do things with the new facilities they've got. So they've got the new clubhouse, or it's not a new clubhouse, it's always been there, but they've renovated it and made it just look a lot nicer. And I know they're planning on opening that up 2 days a week to some elderly residents who live in a special elderly block of static homes just down the road from the ground. So it's somewhere they can go and meet as well. So it's not just all about the football, it's about making it a real community spirited club.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah.
I mean, on the subject of your women's team, which you've mentioned a couple of times, has the Lionesses' success impacted like your women's team and interest in that, as I know it has at the professional level?
I think it's starting to. Funnily enough, this is great timing because we had our first game on a new surface last night, and it was a women's friendly. And it was put together right at the last minute. There wasn't really any time to do any real marketing for it because it was literally like, oh, we've got a chance to test out the surface before the first competitive game. Can we get another team over quickly enough? So it was a real rush job. But there was still last night about 40 or 50 people in watching. I just think that's amazing. You probably wouldn't have got that 3-4 years ago. And I think the Lionesses the success will definitely impact on the popularity of women's football. It should do as well. It deserves to.
It deserves to. I mean, I used to be skeptical about it, but since watching more of it, I started off attending the odd WSL game myself. I've actually just purchased a women's season ticket for next season for Brighton.
They're cheap, aren't they? I got an email about it. I couldn't believe how cheap they are.
I think it's £49 or something.
I know, it's ridiculous, and it's a really good standard of football.
Yeah.
So again, what you said, I mean, I grew up as a child in the 80s and women's football it wasn't visible at that time. You know, the idea of women playing football, it wouldn't have interested me at all, if I'm being completely honest. Going to the Lionesses this summer, I've got 2 sons, a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. They went to one of the games at the Amex, the Norway 8-0. They watched every game on telly. We went over to the Newhaven clubhouse, funnily enough, to watch the final with about, again, 50 or 60 other people. And they celebrated that victory just as much as they would have done if the men's had won. And that is just something that would not have happened when I was a child. Would not have happened at all.
Because that is actually lovely to see, isn't it? The next generation.
It is. And when I went to the game as well, I remember I was sat next to I don't know, a girl who must have been about my eldest son's age, maybe 11 or 12 years old, and you could see she knew everything about every single player on the team, and she was getting really excited to be up close to her idol, and basically it reminded me of what I would have been like when I was that age. I would have been excited about seeing the men's team play, and it was just really nice, because again, that's maybe something that wouldn't have happened back when I was a child. I had girlfriends that played football, but you know, it was probably difficult for them to be taken seriously, if I'm being honest. And actually, I grew up with one of my best friends at school. His sister actually went on to play for Arsenal women and the Lionesses back in the early noughties. A woman called Angela Banks.
Yep.
And I don't think at the time I appreciated quite how much of a big deal that was, but she was actually a trailblazer for what's followed. And I think as a town we should be a bit more proud of her than we actually are.
Exactly. I mean, it's nice that it's now coming to the forefront. I mean, I don't know if you were aware of this, but when they did the celebrations in Trafalgar Square, Jill Scott said it's actually not about us, it's about the ones that went before.
Yeah.
And I feel that a lot of people need to maybe look into that in a bit more depth.
Definitely. I think, you know, Liz has been, and I mean, I'm sure any woman footballer will tell you the same thing. It's been a very long time coming. It's something they've had to really work hard for to be accepted. And I think actually, if you look at social media comments, they're still not accepted in some sections of, you know, there's still a lot of scorn poured towards women's football, which again, it makes me laugh, because you'll see scorn poured towards it by people who say, oh, I wouldn't watch it if it was on in my back garden. And it's like, well, how do you know what it's like? If you're admitting you're not watching it, how can you have an opinion about something you know nothing about?
Exactly.
You know? I think what we've got to be careful with is comparing the women's and the men's game. They are different games.
Exactly. They're two separate products, really.
Exactly that. You wouldn't compare under 12s football to under 18s football. You just wouldn't do it.
Exactly.
Why do we compare? They're different sports, and if I'm being honest, I think some of the technical level of the women's game is higher than the men's. The physical aspect may be different, but I think technically there's not much in it.
I mean, I was actually just going to say similar to you. I mean, obviously you watched a lot of the games, as I did myself. I mean, I was fortunate enough to be at the final.
Oh, well.
And I can safely say that Millie Bright is actually one of the best defenders I've seen, male or female. Just positionally, she's so aware of everything.
Yeah, well, my children were going on about, can we get an England shirt with Mead on the back? You know,
that
Mead
is lovely to hear, isn't it? That.
And it's just amazing. I'm where I coach football at a football school in Brighton called Five Way Soccer, and there were boys turning up in the women's training kits. You know, it was just it's really great to see, and it's, I mean, not from a male perspective, but it's just brilliant for the young girls as well, that they've now got real idols that they can look up to and think, well, that could be me in 10 years time. And I think that's really important.
Exactly. On the subject of you saying the word 10 years there, what would you say the 10-year vision for Newhaven is?
I mean, the immediate vision is to try and get out of the division they're in at the moment, for the men's team this is, which is the Southern Combination Premier Division, Football League Premier Division. They've never been beyond that. They got, as I said earlier, they got very close last year. They got to the playoff, but they couldn't quite get through. They've got the ground grading, so the second they achieve promotion, if they can achieve promotion, then yeah, they can go up to that next step they can go up to that next step when they're ready, which will hopefully be this season. But they've not had the best start. Two losers and a win so far. I think once and when they achieve that, it will be a period of consolidation. Just stay there and then look to build and go through again. I think we're not a club that pay big money. I know that sounds mad because we're talking about non-league football, but even at this level, money talks. There are a couple of clubs last year that I'm not going to name them. People who have an interest in Sussex non-league football will probably know who I'm talking about, but they were paying ridiculous money.
I've got an idea who you mean.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have. They were paying ridiculous money, and to be fair, Newhaven, along with most teams in this league, can't afford that. It's just not sustainable in the long run. So they are a team that are never going to be able to, unless they get a suddenly wealthy benefactor coming in. They're not a team that's going to be able to throw loads of money into things. So I think for the time being, it's getting up to the next league, consolidating at that level, trying to grow the club as a community club that we were talking about earlier. Maybe open up Clubhouse as a social club, so that it's a hub where local residents can go, feel safe, somewhere where kids can go, watch the games on the telly. I think it's about taking it in slow steps and see what happens. I mean, I'd love to sit here and say, oh, we're going to be the next Dorking and we're going to like go to try and get in League Two, but that's just not realistic at this moment in time.
It's about small steps, isn't it, and building.
Exactly. I think a 10-year plan, it's really hard because in non-league football, things can change so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Things can change so quickly. You know, as we've said, it's they've got Newhaven have got a fantastic squad, but 2 or 3 injuries, and it just changes the whole complexity of the team, completion of the team. So it's yeah.
I mean, just on the subject there, obviously we were talking about the financial side of football.
Yes.
How could the FA and the government, if you like, maybe better support these smaller teams to make it filter down better, in your opinion?
I mean, there's so many ways they could do it. I think if you just look at the way money is divvied out from the very top of the game to where we are somewhere near the bottom, it's not comparable, not comparable at all. So the FA Cup is a good way that normally we start off at the extra preliminary stage. At Newhaven, we got through that. You get a nice little bit of money for that. But the FA Vase, which offers a club a really good chance to get to Wembley, Littlehampton, a local Sussex-based club, got there last year through it. But the money you get from winning rounds is tiny. But if you get drawn away to somewhere up north, it's regionalised for the up until the quarterfinals, I think, and then it becomes a national thing. So I think South Shields got drawn. South Shields, which is up in I think it's up Newcastle way. They got drawn away to Littlehampton. And I remember seeing something on Twitter saying it cost them more to put that day on, get a coach down there for the supporters and all that stuff, than what they actually made from it. I mean, how can that be right? That's at a quarter-final stage of a national competition.
That's not right.
It's just not right at all. So I think that can definitely, the money involved in football can definitely be divided better. Prize money could be better. I think there's, I don't want to get myself into trouble. I think there's a lot of ways to be fined for a small. You've got to remember these clubs are being run by volunteers, and if they just forget to tick one box or just do something, not because they don't know they have to do it, but because they've just got so much other things. They've got full-time jobs on top of the work they're doing. It's like having 2 full-time jobs, and any little mistake can be penalised financially. And you're not talking about lots and lots and lots of money, but where every penny is so sacred to a non-league side, any fine is just unnecessary quite often. So I think things like that. I mean, you only have to look at the professional game. The disparity between a Premier Division side and the League One, League Two sides, which you know we've had quite a lot almost going out of business in recent years, and that's at professional level. You know, non-league clubs feel that pinch just as much.
I can imagine.
And as we've said earlier, it's not easy when you then have certain clubs throwing money about, because it makes players maybe more demanding. I don't think we've had that in Newhaven, luckily, but I'm sure there are players at other clubs who are going, well, hang on, he's getting paid so-and-so here. I want to get paid so-and-so as well. And that becomes really difficult for clubs to keep up with. And I'm not having to go at the players here. I totally get that. Why wouldn't you want as much money as you can?
Of course.
If someone's being paid £250 a week somewhere and you're getting £10 a point, of course you're going to want the 250. It stands to reason you are. But for most clubs, that's just not sustainable. So I think Sorry, that's the doorbell going. Sorry about that. So I think at Newhaven, what they've done really well is they've built a real tight-knit squad. They've been together, the majority, the nucleus of the team have been together now for a good 3 or 4 years. They all get on really well. They're all good friends, and they're all in a cause. They see the vision that Newhaven has of they want to get up that league. They are improving the facilities. They're getting more fans through the door. So,
as sort of a final point, if you don't mind me asking, how can somebody, if they want to get involved with like Newhaven or a local non-league club, what's the best way of us doing it?
Honestly, just come along to a game on a Saturday and ask someone, because any help that anyone offers will be gratefully received. Like I said, I've got no practice. They've been doing loads of on the clubhouse. They've been doing loads of work, like relaying steps, cleaning everything, painting everything. I'm terrible. If I did any sort of painting or anything like that, it looked worse than it did before I started. However, there's a role. I've found a role that I can do. A football club will find a role for you, whether it's working behind the coffee stand or the bar, maybe just becoming a ball player. If you're a child, you could be a ball boy. They love that. People going in around getting the balls. Again, for children, mascots. There are so many ways that anyone can get involved. There's so much to do, so much that goes into just putting a match on. That
Awesome.
any club will be grateful for support. So yeah, fire them a message on Twitter. Can I get involved in a club? Yes, yes you can.
Thank you so much for your time, David.
No worry, Damien.
And I'm going to wrap this up. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Lovely. Do you have any idea where this might go out?
This will be out hopefully in the next 2 or 3 days. It'll be on the YouTube. I'll send you links.
Lovely. Can I just mention